WNST, watching the Orioles here this week. Luke Jones is on the scene for all things birds, but it's all season for all the rest of the teams. Obviously, the Ravens have run off into the abyss here for the next 5 weeks, and hopefully we don't hear from any of them. And the last piece of news we had was Macklin, and good news on the Ravens side, and certainly for the Wizards. They have a draft coming up later on this week, as do the Capitals. And I want to welcome Ed Frankovic, our longtime Caps blogger, historian, back in here during a week when it's 90-plus degrees every day to talk, of course, hockey, of all things. And it feels like the season ended a week ago because it did, but the season's never over. And this offseason, perhaps the strangest of all offseasons, because most of these leagues haven't expanded in a long time. And hockey putting together a new set of rules for the Las Vegas Knights. And this is a very interesting little draft coming up this week, I think, for anyone who loves hockey, right?
Yeah, this is big for the league, expanding to 31 teams. The Vegas Golden Knights are going to get to pick one player from every team. They're going through that process as we speak. And Wednesday night on after the awards show, they're going to announce the team, who everybody lost, who the Vegas took on from every team. The Caps are going to get announced last, though. That is the bummer.
Well, it's alphabetical, right?
I think it has to do with record.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
So you would think that they'd put the Stanley Cup champs last, but it went through based on...
well, Winnipeg would be last if it were alphabetical, right?
Correct, yep. So it went based on standing. So the Capitals are going to lose a good player. It's going to be either Philip Grubauer or Nate Schmidt, or could be, Brett Connolly or Jay Beagle, but heavy money's on Nate Schmidt or Philip Grubauer right now.
For the Las Vegas team, there's obviously Capitals roots there with McPhee, who put together large stretches of this team before McClellan sort of roughed it up around the edges. And, to no difference. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter who's building the team. If you don't hoist the Stanley Cup, it doesn't really matter. But in McPhee's case, this is an interesting thing that he's been charged with. And, look, I go back. I've been on the radio 26 years now, Ed. I remember the expansion draft of the Florida Marlins. I remember the expansion draft of the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Colorado Rockies. And I remember what a big deal that was back in the day. But it really was picking amongst chumps, right? The NHL has really tried to make this so that the Las Vegas Knights actually pick 30 National Hockey League players, right? Like, they're going to have a pretty representative team if they're getting everyone's Nate Schmidt or everyone's Grubauer. They're not really picking through minor league dregs here. They're picking pretty decent hockey players.
Absolutely. This is the best setup ever for an expansion team. And let's be honest, they paid for it. $500 million they paid to have a team. So you could protect 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and a goalie, or you could go 8 skaters and a goalie. And it was interesting to see how teams went about it. Nashville Predators, who lost to the Penguins in the Stanley Cup Finals, ended up going with 8 skaters and a forward. They had to protect their forward defense, and Subban and Yossi, and so they had to protect their guys, and Ellis and Ekholm. And then the Islanders protected 5 defensemen. So there are some good players out there. There's a lot of decent goalies. Marc-Andre Fleury is going to be leaving the Pittsburgh Penguins, and it's pretty much for sure that Vegas will take him. And whether they flip him to another team or they keep him, that will be interesting. So George McPhee has a lot of options. He's openly stated, if you want to try and keep a guy, let's talk. What kind of deal can you make for me? There's rumors that he's already stockpiled 3 first-round picks to save players from teams have offered up their first-round picks. Now, the Capitals don't have any first-round picks to give this year. They don't have a first, second, or third because they've traded those picks trying to win the Cup, and they haven't done that. And last week they traded a 5th-round pick to pick up from Minnesota Tyler Grawback, a forward who played 52 games in the league this past year for the Wild, scored 7 goals. And the reason the Capitals had to do that, if they don't make that trade, then they've got to expose one of Tom Wilson or Lars Eller. Now they have both those 2 guys protected by picking up Grawback last week. So McClellan was busy last week. They were able to pick up a player for a 5th-round pick. Grawback will probably play in Hershey next year. He's a young player, but he's on a one-way deal. So the Capitals will pay $600,000 probably to have him play in Hershey. But that's the price you pay when you're trying to protect some of your assets. So the Vegas Golden Knights are going to get a lot of good players. There's a lot of good goalies on that list, a lot of good defensemen. The forwards a little less so because you could protect up to 7 of them. So they're going to be picking a lot of third and fourth liners. There are some top guys out there, Bobby Ryan and James Neal, but Bobby Ryan's going to cost you $7 million cap hit. So McPhee has a lot of interesting options, and it's going to be some fun watching this on Wednesday night.
Ed Frankovic joining us here, all things hockey, and of course, the Caps will lose a player. Maybe it's Schmidt, maybe it's Grubauer, maybe it's Connolly. We'll find out on Wednesday. All the awards come out on Wednesday, and this is the time of the year where you put this on, you see this Penguin thing that happened, but in the regular season, the Caps were incredibly dominant. These award shows, tend to be a little overwrought, but I know the NHL is trying to extend the season and get us interested this week. For the Caps, this offseason, I don't know that there's anything they're going to do that any of us are going to stand up and cheer about, right? Like the Ravens and Macklin last week gave us all a nice little feel-good before training camp. I don't know what the Caps' feel-good story would be this summer about trades or dealing or acquisitions or losses. I think every one of us expected that when they skated off the ice after Game 7 and having lost in the second round, that we would not see, and we talked about this for months, that it would be a different team coming up next year, a much different team, a diminished team heading into next season. Ed, where are we, man? I mean, give me a little update on everything that is off-season Caps player by player, because I think there were notions of trading Ovechkin, and I think we all know that that's sort of foolhardy. That's not going to happen. But what could happen here in the coming weeks?
Well, the first thing is the Players Association agreed to take partial escalator clause on the salary cap. So the salary cap's going up from about $73 million to $75 million. That's good for the Capitals. It would have been nicer had they taken the full 5%. They could have gone up to 76 or 77 would have been nice. But let's start at the top with Alex Ovechkin. He said over the weekend that his injuries have healed and he's getting ready to start training again. He played actually in a soccer game, played goalie over in Russia. So he says his hamstring and his knee have healed and he's going to start training. That's important because talking to a lot of people around the organization, they really believe that he's got to get down under 225 if he's going to be an effective player next season. He's got to get his speed back. So he's got about 15-plus pounds to lose. He's got to train differently and get faster. So that's number one priority is get Alex Ovechkin back to the guy we saw in 2015 and 16 when he scored 50 goals, which was his third straight 50-goal season. I really believe, and looking back on it now, I mean, the difference probably between the Caps beating Pittsburgh and losing to Pittsburgh was simply Ovechkin just didn't have a good playoffs. It was probably the first time I could pin this one on him because he just did not play well. He had the injuries, yes, but I think that came from his conditioning. The next big thing is probably that's going to set the whole offseason in motion is Evgeny Kuznetsov. He's a restricted free agent. The question is how much money does he want and how much money is he going to get? There's talks around $6 million a year. Backstrom's the first line center. He's easily the second line center. I don't think they're going to pay him more than Nicholas Backstrom at $6.7 million. I don't think they can. So Kuznetsov contract's going to set it up for the restricted free agents, which include Dmitry Orlov, Nate Schmidt if he's not picked by Vegas. Those three guys, and then you had Grubauer's a restricted free agent as well. Brett Connolly's a restricted free agent. So the Caps, Andrei Burakovsky's a restricted free agent. So McClellan has said his restricted free agents are the first priority. So those guys are going to be the priority. But I still go back to unrestricted free agent TJ Oshie. You don't have a whole lot of time to decide on Oshie because I doubt that McClellan's going to have these restricted free agent contracts done by July 1, and TJ Oshie hits the open market on July 1st. There's been talks that the Capitals have had verbal. John Shannon out of Canada has reported that the Capitals have a verbal deal with Oshie done. They didn't want to sign him before this expansion draft because then they would have had to protect Oshie, so this allowed them to protect another asset.
And there's a lot of that going on around the league, right? I mean, this expansion draft has really restricted anyone signing players at this point because you don't want to sign a guy and then have to claim him, right?
Absolutely. It's all part of the strategy and protecting your assets. And you talked about a diminished roster. Yes, absolutely. The Capitals are going to be a diminished roster starting in the fall. They're going to have to bring up some guys. Their defense is going to look a lot different because I just don't see any scenario where Carl Alzner's back with the Capitals. If they do re-sign Oshie, that probably means Justin Williams is gone. Daniel Winnick is gone. So you're looking at a lot of different team come the fall, and you're going to have to rely on, well, Taylor Chorney's probably going to be in the top 6 on defense. Here's a guy who's been a 7th defenseman. When he stepped in, he's played well. So Taylor Chorney's looking at probably being in the top 6. If the Knights don't take Nate Schmidt, your top 6 D is probably looking like Carlson, Schmidt, Orlov, and Niskanen, and then Orpik and Chorney. There's your top 6 with a guy like Madison Bowie or maybe Tyler Lewington or somebody coming up from Hershey challenging and being that 7th spot. So there's your defense. Up front, it's going to look, it all depends on Oshie. What happens with Oshie? If they keep Oshie, then that top line's intact of Ovechkin, Backstrom, and Oshie, and then you're probably looking at Burakovsky bumping up with Johansson and Kuznetsov on that second line, and then you're trying to fill in on the bottom 6. So they're still going to have a good team. They're still a playoff team. They're still going to be around 100 points, I would think. Maybe 105 if things go well. If things don't go well, you needed 95 at least to get in last season. So they're still going to be a playoff team. They're not going to win the President's Trophy, but maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah, I don't know what that's gotten us the last couple of years. You can find Ed at Ed Frankovic, Ed on Twitter, and Ed at WNST.net. I'm sure you'll be watching the awards. I'm sure no one will be glued to the Las Vegas Knights quite the way you are. Hey, what do you make of the Vegas franchise? I mean, you're a Vegas guy. You go out there with your buddies, and you shoot around at golf, and, you've bet the hard 8 in your day. No stranger to the Strip. I find it fascinating that the NHL and the NFL are both going in there in the coming years, and how this is going to work out as a hockey destination, as a place that, Caps fans would circle the calendar and say, hey, let's go out there. And I know the schedule's coming out in a couple of weeks. And believe it or not, Ed, I'm scratching my head about 31 rinks in 31 days. I really am.
Oh, that would be great for you to finally be able to do that. I know the health issues with your wife, and thank goodness she's.
Well, my wife says, well, as long as we can see Banff, I'll do it. And I'm like, well, I don't know if there's any way we're going to see Banff and get to Calgary and Edmonton in back-to-back days, but we're going to try like hell.
Wow. Yeah, I think this is great, putting a team in Vegas. I go out there, as you know. I have one of my best friends lives out there now, and it's a booming town, and it's a fun town, and there's a lot to do there. And I think putting that new building and that arena in there, that hockey team, is going to be neat. They're going to draw well, and Tom Foley's got a lot of money, and he's told George McVie, I want a winner as fast as possible. So it's going to be interesting to see what George does. I certainly was a very harsh critic of George here in his time in Washington. I felt like
you were probably the harshest critic. You really never liked when he was running the team.
No, I didn't. I thought David Poile should have never been fired, and I think what he's done in Nashville with a much limited budget supports that. But that wasn't George's decision. That came from the Abe Pollin, Susan O'Malley days. Ted didn't buy the team till '99, and Ted's a loyal guy. He kept George around a long time, a lot longer than I would have. I really felt like they wasted a lot of Ovechkin's early years with a very poor defense. And if there's a criticism I had of George, it was he never built a good blue line. And first thing McClellan did and Trotsky did when they came in here was build a blue line. And we see where that's taken them. They just haven't been able to get over the hump. They've lost to Pittsburgh. I keep saying the Stanley Cup Finals been in the second round the last 2 years. It's unfortunate the way it's unfolded, but once I felt like Pittsburgh beat the Caps, they weren't going to lose anybody. I felt that had the Caps won Game 7 against Pittsburgh, I thought they could have easily beaten Ottawa and Nashville as well. So, but they didn't, and Pittsburgh had a lot of resolve, and Crosby certainly deserved that Conn Smythe in my mind because I think he was the difference in the playoffs this year. So, but this Vegas team's going to be very interesting. I certainly am. I think the schedule is actually coming out on Thursday, the day of the draft. So I'm going to be looking very closely at it, and because my boys want to go out there and see the Hoover Dam and see a hockey game. So it's a perfect type of trip.
And bet the hard 8 and drink free beer. He is Ed Frankovic on Twitter, as well as Ed at WNST.net. He is our Caps historian, blogger, and insider. We're not going to do a lot of hockey around here this summer, but we are going to keep you in the loop for everybody who does love the Caps because we had so much fun with them until, well, it wasn't fun anymore. Meantime, the Orioles at home all week long against the Cleveland Indians. Luke will be at the ballpark as well. You can find me out in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from wherever you happen to be. And, of course, our morning newspaper will ship to your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. That's all powered up by Planet Fitness and planetfitness.com. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. I am authoring The Peter Principles. It is the biography of Peter Angelos as told from a baseball perspective, beginning with him buying the team in Chapter 1. We just released Chapter 6, and that is the Davey Johnson Chronicles and the Ballad of Davey Johnson. You'll definitely want to read that. That's all out at WNST.net. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.